Most of you guys who watch this channel are probably more than familiar with Blake Corum. He's one of the top Michigan running backs ever and was also one of the top players in college football last year. Unfortunately, his season was cut short due to injury, but he has decided to return for the 2023 season, and Michigan is absolutely loading up at the running back spot. In his absence, we saw the emergence of one of the best young running backs in the country, and his name is Donovan Edwards. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, was expected to be the next great Wolverines back, and has already proven that he's one of the most valuable players in the Big Ten and could be a big-time prospect this year. He's going to share the backfield with Corum, and it is by far the best duo in all of college football. In today's video though, I want to introduce you to the most insane backup running back in college football. We're going to go through the rise of Donovan Edwards, talk about his crazy recruiting story, how good he's been for the Wolverines so far, and how much better he could be this year and beyond. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you'd want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So going back in time, Donovan grew up in the state of Michigan, and unfortunately he lost his mother to cancer when he was only 2 years old. He was extremely outspoken about his faith, and he sees his football career as part of a bigger plan. Because of this though, he'd have to lean on his dad. He said, quote, "My dad has just always been there for me. It was kind of rough for him having to raise 2 kids by himself at home, but now I'm real thankful for that with my dad. I'm thankful for my coach who keeps me straight through it all, and for my older brother. He's a role model to me." Big-time athletics was not new to the family, as his grandfather played basketball at Wayne State and also got a chance to play for the Harlem Globetrotters. That's not too bad, and his dad had a funny quote about it. You know, they say athleticism skips a generation. It might have. He was alluding to the fact that his son Donovan was a big-time athlete, but he was not one himself. This would set the tone for the rest of his life, as he fell in love with a certain college football program growing up. He said he loved Michigan State, and because he lived in West Bloomfield, it was only a 90-minute drive to East Lansing, and he became a big Sparty fan during the peak D'Antonio years. Early on, he loved football, and it became his thing. He said, quote, "I've always felt love for the game since I was 7 years old, and then I just kept going." From there, he did a little bit of everything, as he could run it, catch it, and even throw it. He played quarterback until he got to high school. He had a lot of hype going into his high school career, and at West Bloomfield, he was known as a player who craved the bright lights and was ahead of his time. His physical profile made him look much older than his actual age, and I guess he was apparently called Granddad by those who knew him. When he was a freshman, he started to blossom, and as a sophomore, he took it upon himself to make it to the college football stage. His trainer said, quote, "Donovan was easily hands down the most dedicated kid I've ever met. He wants to be the best football player for the longest period of time possible." That is a massive statement. Since 2009, that exact trainer has trained 248 athletes, including 15 Division I football players. He said nobody works harder than that kid. As a junior, he truly broke out, as he finished with 1,300 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, and had 21 touchdowns. He was now a 4-star recruit and had a ton of big-time offers. What was he looking for? He said, quote, "I can't go somewhere where I barely know the coach. I'm going to have to be around my position coach all the time, and I have to build that relationship with them." Early on, he loved Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan State, and Michigan, and there were reasons to go to all of them. Where would he end up going though? Well, he was actually very confused. He said, quote, "I'm super confused. At first, I thought I had an idea, and then I just lost it. I get a lot of coaches texting me every day, and I wonder what I should do." Eventually though, it would come down to 2 schools, Ohio State and Michigan. How fitting. Near the time of his commitment, both the Buckeyes and the Wolverines were tied with 4 votes apiece in the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball projection, but something happened behind the scenes. It always seemed that Donovan wanted to go to Ohio State, but it did not end up working out. He said, quote, "I was their number 1 running back on the board. I was just taking my time during the recruitment, and then they told me they're going to take 2 running backs. I'm like, cool, that's perfect. You have to have 2 running backs in a class at least. Then Evan Pryor committed. I was like, alright, cool. I'll still take my time with the recruitment. Then they took Travion Henderson, and I was like, alright, bet. Now it's on. I'm about to go to school and make you guys pay later." That's how he was feeling, and I guess no better place to go than Michigan. He chose the Wolverines over the Buckeyes, LSU, Notre Dame, and Georgia, and this was a ginormous get for them, as he was considered a 5-star recruit at the time. But it wasn't going to be easy. While Ohio State had loaded up at the running back spot, Michigan did too. They had 2 future NFL players in Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins, and they also had Blake Corum. That was going to be a difficult depth chart to climb up, but he still picked the Wolverines because he said, quote, "I wanted to do something legendary for Michigan. I always wanted to change the program around." That is exactly what he was going to do, and his last high school game set the tone for the future. Despite enrolling early, he got a waiver to play in the state championship game and ran for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. His team won 41-0. He was arguably the best running back in his class and received comparisons to Alvin Kamara, and honestly, they were justified. Edwards had 46 total offers, and this was backed by his 24/7 ranking. According to them, he was a 5-star recruit, the number 2 running back, and the 33rd best player in the class of 2021. He was a big deal and had lofty goals for himself. He said, quote, "My dream is I want to be a Heisman winner. I want to win a Heisman and a national championship. I want to be drafted in the first round, and I want to win a Super Bowl. That's my dream." So, how would he end up doing? Well, in 2021, he ended up being the 3rd string back behind both Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, but still managed to have a couple of big games. His best performance came against Northern Illinois, as in that matchup, he had 8 carries for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. His best game in the receiving department came against Maryland, as out of the backfield, he had 10 catches for 170 yards and a touchdown in that one. He also had a touchdown in the Big Ten championship game against Iowa, and helped them get to the college football playoff. In their loss to Georgia, he ran the ball 4 times for 16 yards, and had a pretty good start to his career. As a freshman, he carried the ball 35 times for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns. Going into 2022, Haskins was now gone to the NFL, and it would just be him and Corum. He set the tone pretty early on, as he ran for a touchdown in their first matchup against Colorado State, and then had another one against Hawaii. Unfortunately though, he'd miss a couple of games and would not return until early October. He caught a touchdown out of the backfield against Iowa, and then helped them go on the road and beat Indiana. The first magical game he had was against Penn State. In a dominating victory over the number 10 Nittany Lions, he ran the ball 16 times for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he did have a fumble, but he would make up for it later on in the season. The following week, he helped them beat Michigan State, before another 100-yard outing against Rutgers. Right now, Blake Corum was stealing all the spotlight, but Edwards was quietly becoming one of the best backups in the country. He helped them beat Nebraska before a huge moment would happen against Illinois. In that game, Blake Corum would suffer an injury, and maybe Michigan's playoff dreams were going to come to an end. Donovan, though, took it upon himself with Corum absent, and had 2 unbelievably insane games. First, against number 2 Ohio State on the road, he ran the ball 22 times for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 9.8 yards per carry, and even had an 85-yard run. It seemed like he single-handedly put the Michigan team on his back and helped them beat Ohio State, and he became a legend that night. It looks like he got revenge after all. That would carry over to the Big Ten championship game, as against Purdue, he ran the ball 25 times for 185 yards and another touchdown. This would punch their ticket to the college football playoff, and against number 3 TCU, he once again went over 100 yards, as he had 119 yards in their loss to TCU. It was an unfortunate way to end the season, but a spectacular way statistically for him to end the year. He finished his sophomore campaign with 991 yards and 7 touchdowns on 140 carries. He also averaged 7.1 yards per carry, and now he'll be one of the top backups in the country. He could probably play anywhere, and what makes last season even more insane was the fact that he was hurt for most of it. He apparently had 2 screws in his hand and broke his thumb against Nebraska. He also played on a torn patella the entire season and didn't have surgery on that until February. It looks like he's good to go with rehab now, but he also had a knee injury in week 2 against Hawaii, and that's why he missed the games against UConn and Maryland. In retrospect, it just makes it more insane what he did against Ohio State and Purdue. And Edwards had this to say about Corum: "He's the best running back in college football. If he didn't get hurt, he would have easily won the Heisman. This is for you." He dedicated his performance to him, and what's crazy is he really did stick it to Ohio State in the most brutal way possible. Currently, he is seen as one of the best running backs in college football, and is a projected 3rd-round pick according to NFL Mock Database. In my opinion, his ceiling in the NFL is much higher than Corum's, but both of them have a chance to be historical and be the best duo in college football this year. I'm really pumped to watch, and Edwards truly is the most insane backup running back in the game. But what do you guys think? If you're a Michigan fan, what do you think of Donovan Edwards? What do you think of this year's team? And what player should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about the rise of Blake Corum. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.